A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Films I'm Willing to Talk About Again. Yet, this is a film that I have not talked about back then, nor am I going to be talking about it again, because this is in fact the first time ever that I've talked about it. This is yet another one of those moments where I can gladly consider that this is a time where I've got bonus content available, as I was able to see this in theaters in the same way that I saw the Batman 2022 in theaters with Robert Pattinson. But here comes a Jared Leto film, Morbius. This came out on April 1st of 2022, the same exact time that I saw the Batman 2022, which had come out sometime prior to it. Yet when I did get myself the chance to be able to see Morbius 2022, it's safe to say that, well, of all films I was able to watch, I can't ultimately put my finger on it if this is supposed to be good or bad, because there's just a lot going for it that I feel like could have actually been done so much better than ever these days. And with most films out there being rated in certain ways that might make you wonder, why do people rate them these ways? And nowadays it does seem like it's all coming together. As I've talked about other films every now and then, I talked about ones that were brand new, ones that were old, ones that I've been able to see in recent years, just so I didn't have the chance to talk about them on YouTube for the first time, or for another time. And in any case, well, with all the films that I've been able to cover so far, based on what I've already talked about, it's safe to say that with at least 20-something episodes down the line, and a lot more to come from now on, we are definitely going to have plenty of times to be able to comprehend these different changes, and also to be able to understand different things that relate to how we look at movies the same exact way that we used to, or completely differently because of what happened in recent years. And because of what had happened in recent years, lots of other things had happened too. But yet, when it comes to the film industry, we're never looking at it the same way again because of many changes that have been brought upon us, and many which were just terribly bad. The last year alone sure has proven to be quite a challenge in our lives. Definitely the worst period of time in our whole lives possible. Man, that's just how bad 2021 is. And I know I've talked about it so many times, but now I just feel like I'm getting off track here. But that's just the thing about it. I'm kind of stalling, as this film actually does give us a bit of an insight on what the Marvel character known as Morbius is like. Dr. Michael Morbius, a scientist who studies on blood, specifically the kind of blood that's obtained from animals, as animal-based blood is in fact able to cure a certain sort of blood-related disease that he has. And without a certain type of blood flowing through his system at all times, he would unfortunately never be able to survive or be able to walk on his own very well. So what does Michael Morbius do? Well, he turns to science and evolution, and a lot of different questionable experience and experiments that happen on certain occasions. Many breakthroughs had taken place, and he was also able to do a lot of accomplishments in doing so, with plenty of different laboratory-based works that Morbius is well known for, especially after graduating high school and college. He certainly had built a lot of experience and plenty of significance in most fair trades in terms of his own work. But on one certain occasion, where Michael clearly finds a certain breakthrough that just might be able to finally cure him of his own disease, what happens here is where the film gets incredibly gritty and rather scary. Because at one point, while Michael is sailing on a cargo ship, a ship that is in fact able to hold his own sort of mobile laboratory along with them, as well as a co-worker slash friend of his, it's safe to say things do take a turn for the worse. When Michael basically extracts blood from bat DNA, adds it to the mixture, makes it homogeneous, and it apparently has a DNA matchup that will be compatible with his own blood, especially the type that it is. So Morbius is able to inject it into himself, and he is then strapped onto a chair. The kind of chair that is meant for most experiments on humans of all sorts, especially because of how they lash out violently at times. And this is pretty much where we do get to see the rather dramatic transformation. Michael Morbius is now a vampiric assassin who pretty much preys on anybody out there that has blood. It's revealed that these are the kinds of victims that end up in Morbius's grasp and have their blood sucked out of them. Very vampirous, if you ask me. But after some time passes, after these crimes are pretty much put together, the law ends up going out there to try and find him and to be able to determine if he was actually responsible for these murders. While Morbius does in fact intend to go quietly and privately to try and find a cure for his own confliction. Especially since the kind of artificial blood that he uses in both blue and red coloring apparently deteriorates over time. And the sort of window that happens in between consumption of these kinds of artificial blood supplies apparently doesn't last as much as he would have hoped for. While his condition was able to give him a lot of superhuman-esque powers, it's safe to say that his own confliction appeared to be a lot worse. And because of his insanely bad need for certain amounts of blood or certain kinds of blood, apparently goes worse over time, like a certain addiction takes place. He does enlist the help of a best friend of his that he had at one point back in his childhood days. And this friend of his apparently goes to the point of being very jealous of his work, jealous of his accomplishment, and jealous of his own cure to his own disease. That he himself takes a syringe of this exact substance that Morbius used on himself and then basically uses it for his own personal gain, turning himself into a vampirous person as well. But unlike Michael, who basically has a disease of some sort that affects his blood and is in fact going to require a certain kind of blood that would be necessary to ensure his survival, this friend of his apparently much stronger thanks to this substance as a whole. And so as a result, what happens is that as time passes by, these two get into such a big conflict and eventually get into a point where they would basically have to find a way out of this. But as time does in fact pass by, the law is on their tail and their own friends and family are not necessarily very bright about their own decisions, but that doesn't really stop them from being vampirous beings that are very superhuman in most different ways. They could have flight, they could have speed, they could have strength, they could have agility, stamina, whatnot. But ultimately what happens here is that we do get to see a somewhat epic battle happen between the two, and it does all come down to an ending that pretty much can only be described as a pretty badly placed cliffhanger, because I especially remember that when I saw this the first time in theaters some time ago, I could not quite understand how on earth is that supposed to be an ending to a movie like that. As a matter of fact, what even happens is that they have Michael Keaton at a certain point in the end credits scene that happens in the film itself, just to at least give us some sort of connection that happens. In case you're familiar with the Morbius comics or anything else that relates to Morbius, then maybe you might understand what's going on or what Marvel is trying to do. Because Sony and Marvel going together is apparently not the same as Marvel and Disney. So, I mean, these Sony Marvel pictures, at least are a lot better in so many ways compared to how the MCU films do. I mean, I'm more than glad that they have zero connection whatsoever. But with people trying to pressure the Walt Disney Company to try and bring Tom Hardy's Venom and Woody Harrelson's Carnage into the mix in the MCU itself, one can only imagine what would Jared Leto's Morbius be like if he were in the MCU as well. He definitely shouldn't be anything like the scary type of satirical display that what we've seen here. But overall, at least for being a film that's a combination of superhero, satire, horror, drama, and a little bit of slasher. For a Jared Leto film, this is actually thousands of times better than Suicide Squad. Yeah. Suicide Squad may have been incredibly successful, but it had the worst Joker that we've ever seen possible. But here in Morbius, many years after the events of Suicide Squad, where Jared Leto's own Joker is completely cut from his own life and his own career, this is so much better. I would take Morbius as a role for Jared Leto way more than as Joker. Even Joaquin Phoenix has done a million times better at Joker than he did. But in any case, though, that's just pretty much where I come to an end here with this whole thing. But it's not to worry, because I actually will be doing at least a couple more of these bonus episodes, and I'll have them featured here on this series soon enough. But until then, if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.